We good? Public budget meeting. Today's March 1st, 2019. The time is 5:01 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, direct and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law, a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Newton. Councilman Seaton. Here. Councilman White. Here. Councilman Walsh has not, Councilman Walsh has not arrived, and Mayor Hache.
Here. Please stand for flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence in honor of the brave men and women serving our nation's armed forces and its first responders. Thank you. We'll start with comments from the public, not to exceed 3 minutes per person. No takers? All right, we'll get on to the discussion items.
This evening, we have several different divisions. We are starting with the Ridgewood Water Utility, which Kathy is our director, with Dan Timoney and also Jeff Fasano of the department.
Okay. Can you hear me? Fine? Okay. Just want to recognize we have two council people here from Midland Park. Thank you for joining us tonight, stakeholders in this process as well. As you know, Dan Timoney is our business manager. Joe Fasano, to my right, is our senior engineer. Dan helps me with the operating side of things. Jill put together the whole capital budget, so they're both here to aid me with any questions you may have as we go along. I put together a PowerPoint presentation, about 22 slides, but I believe we'll be able to get through it in about 15 minutes and leave plenty of time for your questions. But certainly stop me as we go along if you have any questions on any of the content. The full slideshow will be made available on our website by Monday, along with additional reports that are referenced in the document. I mean, it feels like we were just here yesterday. A year went pretty fast, and we'll sum that year up. So to start, just for the purposes of putting this on the website, I thought it was good for consumers to see how we're governed. So we have the listing of a governing body. I think I spelled everyone's name correct. We then have our lead staff, leading from top down, with Heather as the village manager and chief operating officer of the utility, myself, Dan, Jill, our superintendents, supervisors, but more importantly, the 31 skilled laborers, operators, repairers, technicians, etc., that really run the utility day to day. And with the launch of our new website very soon, more of that information will be on there so we could share that with the public. Even more important is the village support staff. You're talking about another 100 or so employees that stand behind the utility, whether it's the finance department or the village attorney, Heather's services, your services, the engineering department, park, shade tree, fire, police. It's important to recognize those services that support the utility. Accomplishments. 2018 was a very big year for the utility. I'm not going to go through every accomplishment, but just highlight one on each page. You all know the effort we went through this fall with the PFAS contaminant. We went around to each town, did open forums. We did a full public notice to every consumer. So I wanted to highlight that on this slide. Those forums are very important. We received some very good feedback on those forums, and they helped us move forward with our decisions on how we're going to handle that contaminant moving forward. Another important item to note, our lead and copper situation. This is an issue we've been dealing with since 2012. We've had great success since our full implementation of corrosion control in the system. Last year's results yielded the lowest numbers ever recorded in our system, an 83% reduction in lead results. The number was as low as, I think, 3.5 parts per billion, where the action level is 15. It's the lowest we've ever seen. Goals for this year, again, sticking to what I said earlier, PFAS, we laid out an action plan, and it's important for us to stick to that plan. The new car treatment plant construction has been awarded. We've had about 3 job meetings already to date. We will be breaking ground shortly, probably in a couple weeks. So that project's full steam ahead. And as the mayor mentioned at Wednesday night's conference meeting, Ridgewood Water has filed a complaint in Bergen County Superior Court against plaintiffs, several named, up to another 50 unnamed that we may find for discovery, that we seek to get full reimbursement for the costs of not only CAR, but the cleanup of PFAS in all our wells in the Ridgewood water system in all 4 towns. Lastly, and most important, every day we're dealing with the public and our consumers. For 19, we were really looking forward to restructuring our customer service. As I mentioned, a new website, new public relations, a new front line of the utility, and providing new means for our customers to access their information. Whether it's a new version of WaterSmart or trying to come forward with that again, we really need to get better tools in the hands of our consumers. Last year, at the end of the summer season, we received numerous high bill complaints because people saw all the rain and want to know why their bills were so high. We need to get that information in their hands so they understand, not just on a quarterly basis, but on a monthly basis, what's happening on their property. So I threw this slide in because I thought it was important. Every drop counts. Every year we're asked, why are we in water restrictions? What are we doing to get out of this? How can we improve? So I wanted to sum up our goals for the next 3 years. Most importantly, this year, we're probably going to see upwards of a 2.3 million gallon per day gain in yield from our well system. Between the Carr well field returning to production, a new well we've drilled at our Cedar Hill well field in Wyckoff, a new well that's going in to replace our Linwood well here in Ridgewood, and rehabilitation we're doing on existing wells to bring back their production. We believe that number could be sustained, and it could see moving forward in the next 2 years where we're going to be at as well. 2020 with the addition of the Passaic Valley Water Commission interconnection, and 2021 with a Ravine well going back online thanks to that piece of property we bought adjacent to it, and several other improvements. To highlight the budget for this year, I didn't want to go through every little item, but just kind of give you the important ones. We recalculated all the indirect direct expenses using the Ray Consultants allocation percentages. So that changed some things in the budget. We're maintaining our head count at 40 employees. We don't feel there's the need this year to add or reduce any employees in the budget. We do see increases in the budget for a generator service contract now that we've installed permanent generators throughout the whole system. There's several well repairs and rehabilitations that we're going to perform. Our lab fees for testing are very high. We now have to test for PFAS every quarter. We have the unregulated contaminant rule, the next phase that's been issued by US EPA. So there's several tests we have to do for that. And our next phase of the groundwater under direct influence of surface water testing that we'll be doing at wells that are possibly susceptible to influence by a nearby stream. Additionally, and a big number in the budget this year is paving and traffic protection. We have been doing a significant amount of work out in the field, a lot of it aimed at improving water quality, replacing old mains, hydrants, valves, and to meet the charges that DEP has put forward with the new Water Quality Accountability Act. So a lot of that is there. Additionally, we have new charges for our operations of our SCADA. We've placed modems at locations where we don't have direct fiber. This is replacing our radio system. It allows us more bandwidth and the ability to add cameras in locations where we need them for security purposes. With the increases, we have decreases. We've modified the request for WaterSmart. That's taken the budget down significantly. Our purchase water estimate is down for the year because we anticipate all those wells going back online this year. And we reduced our operating capital to $750,000, which was a goal that we set out last year, moving forward to reduce the amount of surplus that would be used in the budget for that purpose. This is a snapshot of the different categories in the operating budget, so you can get an idea where salary and wages are, total for other expenses, and what makes up that category. You know, statutory, the pay-go capital that we just mentioned. Debt service is still around the $2 million range, but it's going to kick up in the next 2 years, as we discussed last year as part of the 5-year projection, and the current fund transfer of 5%. So we're looking this year at a total revenue required about $16.8 million. This is down from last year, which is a good thing. I think the utility is starting to reach that happy point that we were talking about last year. And it's a good year to show that because, as you'll see in the revenues, we had one of the wettest years on record, but we're still able to sustain the budget and get to a point where we're not doing a huge increase to our consumers. There's just another way of showing those numbers and breaking down a little bit further. You could get an idea where the real big pieces of the pie are, the important parts of that budget, you know, such as salary and wage, source of supply, and operations. If I move too quick, let me know. So it was important to lay out the budget against actual expenses for the last 3 years. Again, I want to point out 2016 is our benchmark year. That was one of the driest years we've had in the last 4 years. So you could see we spent upwards of $16 million that year. You could see 17 where it was nowhere near that amount, and where 18 it's really dropped. 18 because again was one of the wettest years on record. But for 19 we have the $16.8 million request. A capital expense, we're looking upwards of almost $5 million, or a little bit more than $5 million here. This is the breakdown of where that money is going to go in 19. Supply and transfer improvements, constructing that Passaic Valley Water Commission pipeline. It's under design currently, and we believe that we can get that going by the end of this year under construction. Well and treatment improvements, you know, we talked about some of the new wells. In case you're wondering what tablet chlorination is, we'll be replacing some of our liquid chlorination at a couple wells because we need to do some further adjustment there on the pH that we can't do with liquid but can do with a tablet chlorination system. We're going to start investing more money in distribution, new pipes to replace some of those 100-year-old pipes that are out in the system, and of course the equipment and vehicles need to do that work, and the pay-go capital that we mentioned earlier. And just a reminder, pay-go capital is operating capital, so we focus that on more of the smaller items. So if we're going to buy a pipe saw, or if we're going to buy a new piece of computer equipment, software, we have some of our annual contracts in there. Things that shouldn't be in debt capital, we put in that operating cash. There's just an overview of the last 10 years. You kind of see where capital's ramped up. You know, our goal has been since 2016 to invest a lot of money in the system, and you can see in the last 3 years, and including this coming year, how it compares to 2015 to 2009. There's a significant difference in what you've committed to the system, and we're starting to see the benefits of that, you know, all around. So how are we going to pay for all this? What's interesting about this slide I want to point out before getting into how we're going to pay for it all, if you look at the 2018 adopted budget, water rents we anticipated $12.8 million. We realized 12.3. Once again, we were very close to what we adopted and compared to what we received for the year. So we're getting very good at forecasting those rents. The unfortunate thing due to the rain is that for 19 we can only realize or anticipate as much water rent as we received in 18, no more than that. But we can recognize the increase that we're going to get from the new facility charges and an increase that we're proposing on rent if that ordinance passes. Just another visual on that revenue. You can see where the rents are versus surplus and the other miscellaneous parts of the revenue. But more importantly, I want to show you the difference between what is fixed and variable and why it's important that we have fixed revenue and the importance behind what we did last year with the change in the facility charges. Fixed charges should be a minimum of about 20% of the budget every year. So now with that change that was made last year in July, You can see in orange we're at 3.1 million of fixed anticipated revenue, another 2.3 in surplus that we anticipate utilizing, and you can see how the piece of pie on the variable revenue starts to shrink compared to how it's been in prior years. So what are we doing in 19? As you know, in 18, Ordinance 3637 was approved adjusting those facility charges. We did not enact those charges until the first quarter billing of this year. So all ratepayers have started to receive those bills. Ridgewood was first, then Glenrock. I believe Wyckoff and Clark have probably received them to date. But what we're proposing in addition to that for 19 is a 3% rate increase on the volume rate. This time last year when I was sitting in the seat, we were looking upwards of 6.5%. This year we were able to bring it down to 3% rate increase thanks to what we're able to do in the budget in 18 is sustain expense even though our revenue was down. So I think it's a good thing for the ratepayers. We're still looking forward for the next 3 years, possibly having that 6.5% rate increase come true based on our projections on debt and expenses that are going to increase. And we'll be bringing forward this 3% rate increase in the introduction for the budget next, I believe it's in 2 weeks, and then final hearing in April for the public meeting. So there'll be more time to discuss all of this. I just want to show a visual of where those facility charges are. And again, they were effective beginning of this year. And the volume rate, 3% increase, will bring us from the $4.69 per 1,000 gallons that we currently charge to $4.83 per 1,000 gallons. And just so you get an idea of what the impact of that is, the majority of our ratepayers are 5/8 meter holders. In 2018, the average annual bill was about $500. In 19, that will increase to $541. It's about an 8% increase. So that includes that fixed rate increase from 18 and the 3% volume rate increase. It's a very manageable rate increase compared to many other utilities, including the Suez. So with that, I will take all your great questions.
I just want to mention Councilwoman Walsh has arrived to the meeting.
Councilman Seaton?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rich, and Jill, everybody, for working, putting in line, coming around, and just changing every year. You're still doing a great job, and I appreciate it. Could you just kind of tell me where we are in, I believe it was a 6-year capital plan, as this will be year 4 that we're going into, and, you know, just some of the big changes, some of the like, kind of high-level benefits that we're seeing from that.
A good question, and I'll bring up this slide again. You could see we're upwards of beyond 50% of that, 42 million, based on the numbers. And just this spring, we'll be completing our final tank rehabilitation. East Side tank here in Ridgewood was the last one to be completed. So we've touched every tank in the system. Every concrete and steel tank has been fully rehabilitated. If it's a steel tank, it's been stripped of its all paint repainted. New venting, new safety features. We've put mixers in every tank to maintain water quality, new controls. We've upgraded several booster stations, putting new pumps, new variable frequency drives so those pumps don't just function at one rate. They function only at the rate that's needed to sustain the pressure in the system. New controls, we updated the full SCADA system, supervisor control and data acquisition system that controls every part of our system, pumps on and off, maintains pressure, tank level. There was a full upgrade of that system that we can now control every bit of a piece of equipment that we have out there, and we do that via fiber connection or a modem connection to each location. That's taken us to a step that we're now actually able to start building artificial intelligence into that control, because we have the ability to take trends over all the years of how things operate. So we're taking even further steps beyond all those improvements. Wells, we've just finished drilling our second replacement well. Something hasn't been done in the system for probably over 20 years. The Cedar Hill well field, we're looking at a yield about 400 gallons per minute. The Linwood well, we're going to find out this week when they do a pump test. those are the highlights, but there's many other little things to it. Generator improvements, backup power, about 12 critical locations, and the purchase of the Elks Club, which hasn't taken effect yet, but it's part of that money.
And we're going to see movement on that this year. Is work going to start? Do you anticipate over there?
I hope. We're in a due diligence period. We're completing our inspections. If everything goes fine, next step is to hire an architect to do design, which means that maybe we're out to bid by the end of this year or early next year. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Is this on? Is this on? Oh, good. Okay. Rich, just if you didn't mind, first, thank you to all three of you. The type of testing that we can do in-house and testing that has to go out, can you just explain the differences and then the cost savings and why we can't do it all in-house, and maybe elaborate a little on that?
We try to do as much as we can in-house. Right now, it's limited to all our bacteria samples and our water quality parameters that are part of our lead and copper program. We could do pHs, we could do E. coli, we can do alkalinity, but because of the size of our lab, we can't do things like PFAS. We can't do the actual test to see if lead's in the water. We have to send that all out to an outside lab. Our hope is when we move into the Elks Club, based on whatever plan comes out of the architect's drawings, that we're going to have double, triple the size in a lab that's capable of bringing that work in-house, and that will reduce our reliance on outside labs and cost. And then we're hoping to share those services possibly with other water utilities or even with our water pollution control plant, because there's a lab there as well for testing the sewer effluent. But right now we're very limited. We do what we can. If you come down to our Wartendike facility every month, there's just one room just full, stacked of coolers of all the samples we have to send out to labs. I'd like very much to bring at least half of that into our lab.
Okay. Thank you. And I just have to say that from the time I was elected back in 2014, this water utility has come such a long way. It's just really amazing, the level of professionalism, the improvements, and the delivery of safe water to our consumers. It's just incredible. So I just have to say thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I missed the first couple of minutes, but obviously we've been talking about the water department a lot lately, so I think we're all up to speed on a lot of the stuff that's going on. I'm just taking a quick look at your actual budget and your anticipated for 2019. What is the, and maybe I missed this in the first few minutes, what is the big jump, the $500,000 jump in salaries attributed to?
Against actual?
Yeah.
I think it's a change in the indirect direct allocation, and there was one position we didn't hire in 18 that was budgeted for, so that's about $100,000 light item there, IT position, but it's definitely mostly all the allocation that change was increased.
Okay. And then when we had talked about purchasing the Elks Club, we were going to sell off the other piece of property. Have you started that process yet? Or
No.
Waiting for this to close and then we'll
Yes.
sell off that piece? Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Good job, Rich. Question on the 8% increase in water rates you mentioned. You said that this is lower than other municipalities or water utilities. Can you give me a reference point as to, this 8% increase is relative to what is happening in New Jersey?
I don't have real numbers, but what I can do is provide a chart at the next meeting that we had last year. Howard Woods had prepared that outlines the 20 biggest utilities. We're one of them, and we were right in the middle.
Yep.
And at that time, we had projected where we would be after we changed the facility charges, and we were still right in the middle. And I believe we're there, or maybe even lower, because I know Suez put in for a rate increase this year. New Jersey American Water does it every year. Mm-hmm. I don't know where Passaic Valley is. other utilities in them, like Middlesex Water. I'd have to look at their numbers, but I could get that.
Yeah, I would imagine
for you.
some of our residents may have a concern of the 8% increase, saying, why, and, how do we fare versus everybody else? I think that'd be helpful. You have as one of your items allocations, and it's gone up considerably. And I look at the allocations, and it's salary and wage allocation again. It's like 170,000 higher than the year before. Help me understand what that is.
Could you tell me which?
So I went to tab 24, and I looked at number 01Z allocations.
Yes.
Why is that so high?
So that was recalculated using the Wood study.
Okay.
Using the new percentages he had calculated for the indirect direct allocations.
Okay, got it. Thanks. The PAYGO, refresh my memory as to what that's supposed to be again?
So PAYGO is a term that's utilized by the American Waterworks Association. It's capital that's paid for an operating expense.
So give me an example of what that is.
Example for us would be a small piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Maybe a compressor or a pipe saw, a new computer, a security camera. Stuff that if we're not doing a whole project-wide improvement, there's little things we need to buy that are capital eligible, but we don't want to put them in debt.
So it's nothing like like the pumps and or the pipes. It doesn't relate to that, or does it?
It could be an individual pipe.
Yeah.
But if we're going to do miles of roadway, that would be on the other side in debt.
I'm actually surprised that's down, considering how old our utility is. And why is that?
Well, our goal we set out last year was try to stabilize the budget to about the $17 million number and not have it keep growing to limit our reliance on surplus. Because for the past 3 years we've relied heavily on surplus to have the PAYGO where we've had it upwards of $1.5 million at times. So we're trying to stabilize that number.
And then so I'm looking at your budget. It says maintenance of pumping equipment. That seems to be up considerably, $70,000 higher than the year before. Is that due to just simple age and wear and tear?
Age and what we did, we have a contract with a well driller. In past, we've split those costs between operating and capital. We felt it was important just to move that all into operating because it's maintenance. So that's why that number's up.
Okay. And then I know you mentioned your laboratory analysis is essentially doubled from the year before. And is that primarily due to PFOA and PFOS? Is that the main component of what's driving that?
One of the main. The other one is the unregulated contaminant rule. We're now in the fourth round. It started this year. So we're required to test all our point of entries for a series of new unregulated contaminants that the U.S. EPA has created for us.
So how many more of those are we looking at?
We're looking at 3 years of that. Quarterly testing on about 20
new ones that we never had to test for before.
Yeah, and they're largely surface water contaminants, and because we purchase from Suez,
okay,
we have to do them with things like cyanotoxins, algae that could grow in a water body. It's very critical to detect.
Well, why don't they do that? Why doesn't Suez do that? Why do we have to do that?
They have to do it as well.
Okay.
It's a good question you bring up, and we have been trying to seek a waiver from the U.S. EPA on the amount of tests we have to do. They want us to do it at every point of entry. We've been trying to prove to them that it doesn't change for us at every point of entry. So can we limit it to maybe 10 points of entry or less? But getting that decision from them is taking a long time.
They're being extremely cautious, it sounds like, as far as the testing goes.
Yes.
It's tested once and then, 10 minutes later it's tested again. As it goes through our system. Is that kind of what's happened?
If you look at it that way, Suez is testing at the plant, and then we're testing it where it mixes with our system.
That's crazy. Yeah, and then your health insurance is up by $300,000. What is going on with that?
That was, again, adjustment for the indirect direct allocations.
Okay.
So it's not just directly
Related
for
to
the
it.
employees,
Yeah.
it's the whole picture. You know, both direct expense from the 40 employees and the indirect
So
expense from the
based
village.
on the way we've calculated it, based on what Woods did, right? Do you anticipate that that's going to change dramatically again the following year, or is it going to be fairly flat?
No, it should be flat.
Yeah, okay.
The basis of his calculation was that unless you make some drastic change in operation, best example is the Elks Club. You know, once we move into the Elks Club, we should recalculate the percentages, because we're no longer occupying a space in this building.
Okay.
You know, but
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just looking at the overall total revenue requirement and the increase from 2018 actual. I'm trying to break down individual components of it. The other expenses category, 43.6. I'm trying to tie into what the budget increases were mentioned in the highlights for 2019. What is the biggest component of that 43.6% jump in other expenses from 18 to 19?
It's mainly our services for our wells, our electrical contract, and all the work we have to do on the system outside, police traffic control, permits, paving. Our paving costs have doubled in the past year, just based on the amount of work we're doing out in the field.
So really, so then the budget increases, as are mentioned here, really are related all to that other expenses.
I'm
category.
sorry.
So you have on the budget highlights, so all the things that you mentioned that contribute to that 43.6% increase really are the 4 points you have here for budget increases.
Correct.
Everything else is pretty much in line to where,
Yeah, the lab fees is a big one.
yeah.
You know, if you look into the actual sheet of treatment, you'll see that line item and the increase.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions specifically for Ridgewood Water? Because then Rich also has 2 other areas to present. No? Good.
We're
Okay.
finished in 33 minutes.
Okay, so we'll move on to sanitation, recycling, and yard waste, which are the other, actually 3 areas.
Okay, which one first? Remember, I'm on
13?
And then also, make sure to look at, take out 21, because that's the capital requests, and they do have some capital requests. So, in addition to Rich Calby, we also have Sean Hamlin from our Sanitation Recycling Division here this evening.
Ed Batoon's the supervisor of sanitation recycling. He couldn't be here this evening. Sean is like his second in command, so he was gracious enough to come and assist me.
Thank you, Sean.
We're starting with solid waste? Okay. So with each of the 2 divisions, Sean's going to start first. He's going to go over the accomplishments and goals for each division, then I'll highlight what some of the changes in the budget have been and the capital requests that we have for each one.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be here today to speak for Ed. So, as regarding the recycling accomplishments for last year, we are finishing up laying down the wiring for the underground wiring for the new cardboard compactor, which is going to really help with the emissions and the noise around that area. We get a lot of complaints from the residents that live around there. It's also going to help save some fuel from having to start the trucks and run them and compact them, and you know, we're gonna save a lot of.
I just have you speak up a little bit, just a little louder.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. So I think our goal is to have that up and running within the first few weeks of spring. And the other thing that I think we've accomplished is, keeping up with the constant changes of what the recycling requirements are to help us provide a better quality product for our vendors, which is a lot of work that goes into that, and something I think that we're all pretty much proud of. And overall, the safety and the injuries that goes into the everyday, work that we do. I think 2017 was a bad year for injuries, and 2018 was a lot better. A lot better. It helps us with not having to borrow employees from other departments to fulfill the routes. And even in 2017, it worked. It was a lot of work to get those routes done. And some of our goals, I've spoken with Ed, and one of our big goals is down at the recycling center is to better promote the clothing bin. Average citizens throw away about 70 pounds of clothes every single year, and that equates to about 840 tons of quality items thrown away. And I think we'd like at the recycling center to be a major hub in the community in respect to getting some of the unwanted clothes, and then reusing them, and instead of being discarded, because in the solid waste department, we discard of a lot of bags of clothes. And on the bulky waste days, I think it will help to educate people that, that maybe don't know that we have a clothing bin down there. And we have a program dealing with the composting of food and waste, which has been well documented, and we're looking forward to soon the inception of our pilot food waste program, and soon the goal of promoting it strongly throughout the community to our residents as well. And also, one of our other big goals is that we want to, with the new inception of these compactors down at the recycling center, there's going to be a new traffic pattern. And I think we really need to focus on educating the residents on how to appropriate, because we have a lot of guys jumping out of the way of cars down there as it is now. People get in and out of there in a hurry, and also educating the guys that work down there in the yard, making sure that they have the proper PPE, personal protective equipment, and just going about their job in a professional way. For sanitation, one of, I think, our big accomplishments, again, was the overall used sick time and injuries, work-related injuries, and paid out sick time. I think we did a lot better in 2018 than we did 2017, and that's in large part to Heather and Rich. We've been working with them to meet with the employees, and and we met again in January, and I think it's been a lot easier to staff. We've got a lot less people calling out sick and using unnecessary sick days. The other thing I think is we are getting a lot younger. We have a lot of people retiring, a lot of the older guys that are starting to come off of the books. And I mentioned to Rich, we have a unique opportunity to start to educate these guys. And I think that we need to, we spoke about, we only have two title drivers right now, and those are kind of your foremen on the routes, and the other 4 routes, they have people who are in charge but without a title. And that shouldn't make you less in charge, but I think that a title is exactly that. It's entitlement, and I think that it'll go a long way with getting into the heads of those guys to be better leaders than they are now, because with the turnover that we've had, we can't afford to not pass on the knowledge that we have now before all of these guys walk out of the door. And and that includes teaching professionalism, safety. I think that we need to, even though the title drivers are in charge of the maintenance on the truck, I think that they should pass on that knowledge to the laborers that work under them, because when they're on vacation, there's a huge gap in between what goes on with those trucks and the safety that goes on, and the checking the engine oils and stuff like that. I think we need to pay better attention to that. We can definitely get better at that. The other thing is continuing to build our fleet, because we have a really old fleet right now. Some of our trucks are 2015s, and we can't get parts from them anymore. And we're we had a fleet that we bought. Those were the 2015s, right? That we can't get parts for anymore, and it's hard to keep them running. And we're using them as spares right now for when the other trucks come in. And I think our big goal is to, in order to keep the flow of our department going without having to borrow trucks from other towns, and just, the 2015s I think are ready to sell, which will bring in some income for the town. That's another goal of ours. And also starting to communicate with the residents a little better on days like weeks like we had this week with the I think we had a lot of complaints on Monday. People put out their cans on Sunday night, and it was really windy overnight, and the recycling cans went all over the place. And I think that there's improvement there, where we can send out messages to encourage people to maybe not put their cans out the night before it's going to be, a major storm, and to maybe put them out in the morning. And then as a crew, I think knowing that they're not going to do that, we can work better at keeping the guys out there a little bit longer to make sure that people get the opportunity to put their cans out and not just doing the routes and going home. The other thing in regards to in communicating, I'm sorry, I'm still not loud enough. Okay. So in communicating with the residents, I think that there are avenues that we haven't explored yet. I think that a lot of the residents are they are iPhoners and they want to see information on their phone. They don't necessarily go to their computer and go on the website anymore. There are apps like Burbio where you can put links to, I follow it myself. I follow Ridgewood and Glen Rock because that's where I live. And I know that the Glen Rock community pages where the recycling and the sanitation, they have a little arrow underneath them where you can click and it'll take you to a direct link to the website. But Ridgewood doesn't have that. And I think that that's something we should explore.
We also have a Recycle Coach, which
Yes.
we recently implemented, and that's very helpful too, because it actually gives you alerts to remind you to
Absolutely. I
put
spoke with Ed about that, and that's something I would love to see for sanitation as well. And just overall, being able to communicate with the residents when there's icy situations and road closures. We have to alter our routes, and the residents don't know that, and then they get missed, and then the calls start to come in, and I think we can get better at that. And I think that's all Ed had down here. I think that's what we talked about. I hope I haven't taken up too much time.
Okay, I just wanted to mention too that in these two budgets, we've put in 3 permanent part-time people to be assigned to these 2 departments. So this way we can always have a full crew, because there are people who are out obviously on vacation or a personal day, sick day, or maybe out on an injury. And so the hardest thing sometimes to do is to have a full crew going out. And so that will truly assist us in being able to do so.
So, just to make sure I'm clear, are we talking about recycling and solid waste in this discussion? That's what we're looking at.
Recycling and, right, solid waste, right. So between the 2 departments, divisions, there'll be 3 assigned to the 2 of them, sorry. And, yeah, they can basically pull any of those 3 to fill a crew for either sanitation or solid waste or recycling.
Okay. Thank you.
So, do you want us to do the capital first, present that, and then ask questions? Okay, so let's go to the capital request for sanitation and recycling.
Thank you, Sean.
That's 21.
Okay, wait, let me just get there. Hang on. Wait.
Tab 6 was, it's divider 21, and then it's tab 6 at the bottom, at the bottom.
Tab 21?
Correct.
Yeah. I'm sorry. 13, talking about 26.
We were on
Yeah,
13.
it's actually 13.
13, I apologize.
13.
All right. It's okay. Just bear, just,
Capital, tab 13 within, at the bottom,
Yeah, it's 13.
that should be solid waste and recycling.
Correct.
So for solid waste, there's one request, we're continuing with our fleet replacement, one truck a year. So to replace one of our older Packer trucks, you know, as Sean had mentioned, there are very few trucks that are newer than 2015. We got a new one approved in 18, that's on its way. This will be another one for 19, amount of $210,000.
And then recycling,
Recycling, same premise, a truck, but in this case, it's a dual steer truck, because a lot of the recycling routes are handled by a single individual. So the dual steer will allow them to get out of the truck, out of traffic, and pick up the recycling and put it right into the back of the truck. So that's a more expensive vehicle, and that's why that costs $300,000. Additionally, we need to replace the newsprint container at the recycling yard. It's beyond repair, can't even be painted and saved. No. And just to add on what Sean said about food waste, and Mr. Seaton brought it up at Wednesday night's conference meeting, it's very important for us to explore this option because the tipping fees that we pay for our solid waste, our contract ends this year. We're paying about $66.95. We expect it to go up to upwards of $100 per ton, possibly. We're exploring a co-op that the county has as an option. And in addition to that, we've already met with our recycling vendor. Our contract ends with him this April, and they're looking to renegotiate the terms of our disposable rates for recyclables, and that's going to go down as well. It's going to go down, which means we take in less cash for recyclables. So on both sides, the budget's going to be affected drastically. We don't have the full numbers yet, but once I have them, I'll present them. So, but if food waste will get it out of that tonnage, then it will help reduce that impact. Any questions?
Thank you again. I have, I guess, two questions. I know Sean said something about the trucks we want to replace are 2015 trucks. Is that the style of truck, or is that the year it was purchased?
It's the style of truck. They just don't make it. They don't make the trucks anymore, so we can't put them on the road too much because we can't get parts for them. They don't even make.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Style of truck, because when you said 2015, I'm getting my head.
It doesn't sound very old. It doesn't sound very old, but when they break down, it's a hassle to try and find the parts for them, and it can take the last truck that broke down. It took almost 3 months to get a part, and so we can't realistically keep them on the road, you know. And I think that that Ed and Rich have explored selling those trucks, and it'd be better to sell them than to try and keep repairing them.
Okay. And then I was just going to ask about what kind of challenges, if you could maybe be a little bit more specific with recycling that we're going to see this year. Obviously, with a lesser contract, there will be less revenue for the town. I mean,
So our past contracts have all had floor prices. So they've had minimum or maximums that we would have to pay or that we would get for each type of recyclable. The contractors or the facilities no longer want to have that exposure. So they're looking to go to more of a revenue share type of process where to me there's too many variables, but we're exploring them, where they will take the commodities and then based on where the market is and what their actual cost is to process and dispose of it, they'll create a formula each month and then calculate a price that they'll either give us the credit for or we'll have to pay based on whatever commodity, it is. Something like glass is very hard to, there's not a market for it. But paper and cardboard, there's a market for it, so we get money for that. But instead of having that floor price and a set price, they want to make it variable. So it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for us to kind of project where we're going to be, but we just had a meeting this week with the facility, so we're exploring options, with new vendors, different facilities, but then they're located in different places, longer travel time, so there's a lot to calculate.
Right. All right, well, keep us updated.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just again, going back to that truck, so you're saying that's the style, not the year? I just want to make sure I understand. What is the year of the truck?
It's the sanitation packer trucks and the recycling packer trucks. They're called Crane Carrier. It's a company that no longer exists. So, replacing hoses and stuff like that, those are pretty easy. We make those ourselves. But when it's a manufacturer part, we just, there's no parts for them available.
But how old are the trucks?
They're only, they're only, 4 years old now, so. The Crane Carriers are,
No, the crane carriers are in the 2000s. When it's 2015, for me, we have very few trucks that are newer than that. And there were two bodies were repurposed from crane carriers that we put on 2015 chassis for trucks. That's what I believe Sean's referring to.
Okay.
We're not replacing 2015 trucks.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, I didn't understand.
I'm trying to find the year of the Crane Carriers that Ed wrote down for me.
I'm good with that. I wanted to make certain it
Sorry
was
about
that
that.
2015. I didn't understand. So.
And we can get you those years of the trucks we're replacing, and we can send them to you so that you have that. I want to say it was like 2008 or something around.
They're pretty old.
They were fairly old.
They're pretty old.
But we will get you the definite years so that you have the accurate information.
One of the problems is we haven't been able to surplus them because we need, the new trucks that are coming in, if something happens with them, we need trucks that are backup trucks.
So when we get the list of trucks, can we also just get the mileage? I would think it would be kind of just an interesting fact to know the kind of mileage on those. Just another question regarding...
It's 2000. We just verified it.
2000?
Yeah. So
Wow. We got
they're
a
old.
12 buck. Okay.
But yes, we can get mileage if you want. Sure.
Mileage might be interesting
Okay.
to understand.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, mileage and engine runtime, because several of these trucks are just idle.
Because you're idling a lot, sure. That makes a big difference, too.
Correct.
And so you know that as well on one of those trucks, that it identifies or calculates that?
We'll have to see. We're tracking it now,
Okay.
but in the past we didn't.
Okay. And then I just wanted to ask about the clothing collection, textile collection. So, it's such a terrible echo in here, it's awful.
No, you know what it is? It's the laptop back here, the speaker's on. So we speak.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm forever getting rid of clothing. It's like a thing. But I just wonder, I know the container, the collection box, I know when we go down to the League of Municipalities, a lot of times we see that those boxes are there, and there are vendors that are looking to place boxes throughout the municipality. Is that something we should be considering if it's an advantage to us in terms of collection? Because those boxes, what are they, that's a, Rich is making a face, I'm not sure. Is that something we should consider doing? To have different locations for collection? Because I would put a bag of clothing, discarded stuff in my car, and just if I stumble upon a box, I'll put it in.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring, and the main thing is to like Rich said before, is to start to try and control the tipping costs from the sanitation department. When we do bulk pickups, we throw away a lot of clothes, a lot of books, a lot of things that we can reuse, and that adds to the tonnage of every week pickup for the bulky waste. So if we can get any of that out of the tipping fees, that would help.
So would it actually be adversely impact if we put extra boxes around? Because my stuff might go to a pickup like Lupus or AMVETS, or somebody would come to my home. Is it an advantage to collect it or not collect it?
Anything we could get out of the waste stream helps us on the end, because we're paying for the tonnage. So last year we did a competition with the local schools where they collected clothing for 2 weeks, and the school that collected the most, we gave them a prize. We had a recycling magician come in and perform. So we need to start doing more events like that to have these days where people could come and bring items that aren't normally disposed of separately, and that Sean and the crew finds when they go to collect the garbage.
I guess the question is, though, do we get paid for textile recycling, or do we pay for it?
Like, in other words,
We
because
pay for it.
So therefore, it's just as good if you do it to AMVETS or Lupus.
we're better off for somebody like me to continue to do
Correct.
the Lupus
Correct.
collection.
We don't want it in the garbage.
Okay.
It's very...
And you don't want it in the box either. You don't want it at all, actually.
Well, because we're paying for it, but if it's a choice between bringing it to the recycling center or putting it in the garbage, we'd rather have them put it in the recycling center.
And the third choice is that I'm giving good clothing away to a good cause.
And that's
probably
the best choice.
I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I
most
don't
churches-
want to add to anybody's load here, Okay, got it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The thing that I always think about first is safety for your crews. And, obviously we see them on our block, all over town, and it amazes me the way some people will zoom around a truck knowing that, it really, so that's always my big worry, is the safety of the crew. So I'm glad that, that's not a challenge that we have to worry about at this point. And I'm sure Rich has heard it, but, my mom grew up in the Depression, and she'll always say to me they had no garbage to throw out. So I think there's got to be a way for us. I know that REAC works on it with education for composting. I have a compost in my backyard. I try to recycle everything that I can. I try to, separate things that can be donated as opposed to things that are, clothing that just can't be worn anymore, ripped, torn, whatever. But I feel like maybe we have to do some sort of a cheat sheet or something that we can give residents so that they understand the impact, because I really don't think people understand the impact.
I agree with you, and especially because of the new regulations on what we recycle now that, people are starting to throw away pizza boxes, whereas we used to recycle them with the cardboard. It adds to the tipping fees. And the deli containers that we no longer take, those all, in large part have added to the garbage. So the more we can educate them and get them to take more, like we talked about with the compost, that anything we can get taken out of the garbage would help our cause.
So I'm the liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, and we had a conversation about the changes in recycling, and they were going to bring back to primarily the restaurants and the takeout what they can do to cut down on the amount of takeout containers, like have a cardboard top as opposed to a plastic top, have a tin, the foil with the cardboard on it, and that's pretty much 100% recyclable. So, and then it was in part of the conversation about the single-use bags, and, because these are all, it's not just the residents, it's also the business, it's, everybody's kind of got to be in this together. So, and I don't know if maybe we can do some sort of a cheat sheet, because I think the residents have to, we got our recycling sheet and everybody liked that, but it doesn't really tell you the financial impact that is actually going on with solid waste and with recycling. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something that
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that, with the new electronic signs that we have, we could, that's an avenue that we can use. And again, with the, I think basically we're working on a recycling app to educate people. I think that'll help, and I think that'll help a lot, because again, I see it at my dinner table every night with my wife and kids, and they sit there with their phones, and that's how people get information now. It's tough to get them to go, even on your website. But
or maybe like a do-you-know sheet.
Exactly.
That the kids could show to their parents as well. Did you know that, and just kind of go down the list, because when you start to think of it, I mean, when you bring your garbage out to your garbage can and you realize the stuff that's in there, a lot of it is
That's really a brilliant idea, because, I know my kid comes home from school every day and tells me what I'm doing wrong, so. and I learn from her. Maybe that is a good idea.
Thanks. And then I guess the only other question is, everybody that, and again, this is another talk about safety. I've been down dropping stuff off, and I see people literally, come around on two wheels and then literally pull right up to the bins to drop their stuff, forgetting that we're all getting out of our cars to walk across. So I agree with you that down at the recycle center, there maybe can be a better plan for, even if it's arrows or signage, because it's, and it's probably the same person every time. They just haven't been stopped by somebody to say, stop what you're doing, but it's definitely an issue. But did you guys ever think about ways that we can encourage people to really, bring everything down there to try to kind of not have as much at the curb, or, and again, maybe public information that we could get out that, you can bring it down anytime. Because some people don't realize that you can actually put stuff in your car, maybe new residents.
I think that's part of what we should have in that document, and we've been toying around the idea of a video.
Yeah.
A lot of other municipalities have done a video, because we do well by bringing recyclables to the recycling center, because then they're source separated compared to some of the commingled items that we collect at the curb. The best example is newspapers. We get a premium of $10 on the newspaper print compared to just mixed paper, just based on how they sell that commodity to whatever companies are using it. So we have a container just for that at the recycling center, but when you put your recyclables at the curb, you mix it with junk mail, magazines, old books, etc.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe for Earth Day, that could be something that could be on the site around the time that we do Earth Day. So.
And we have been talking to REAC. Sustainable Jersey has something called a gold standard, and the gold standard involves reducing your waste stream by, what's 30% or 20?
I think it's 2 or 3% a year. But it's projected out over a number of years. So you have to establish, and that's what, and it's kind of fluid too, because all these two gold standards is waste and energy. So I guess like we're kind of working with Sustainable Jersey, saying maybe this doesn't work so well, and then they're changing it, and they're helping us to kind of fine tune everything. But you have to have a lot of baseline information, like you need to have established, how much you're collecting and everything else. So that's why I think it would be interesting to if we get the grant for the food composting pilot, then we can maybe try and get a percentage of these 60 homes in Ridgewood and how much vegetative material they bring down to compost, and maybe you could extrapolate that out to get some sort of idea of what that means for the entire village of Ridgewood.
Yeah.
So, I mean, stuff like that will definitely help, and if there's, you know, a savings in tipping fees, then maybe it could be implemented, and if it's successful, it could be village-wide, but we'll find that out.
Yeah, I think our idea is to set goals and then provide
Yeah.
that document.
Yeah.
And
I have, so here, I have, we have a compost that we made. We literally just, you know, made it with some chicken wire and some wood in the backyard. But I have, on Long Island, I have a little composting, you know, you turn it. That thing is great. It's not as much stuff, but those are things too that you could kind of put in there that, you know, it's easy for people that don't want the natural looking compost and everything. Thank you.
Nice job, guys. So I have one question for you. What's a recycling magician?
he actually was at Earth Day.
Oh, really?
Here, and
Yeah,
he had a huge crowd.
Can we have him come in here for one night for village council? Yeah, that would be nice. He could make public comments.
I didn't see the show, so I couldn't tell you exactly, but I believe he just does regular magic, but infuses the idea
Of recycling?
recycling.
Okay, so he's a general magician, he's not recycling magician.
He doesn't make our tonnage disappear.
Okay. You keep getting on staff. So just one other question. So I looked at the budget, and you have temporary and seasonal for the solid waste is double what it was last year. Just help me understand what the increase is for that. It's account number 013, solid waste collection. It's going from 24/7 to 50.
That's because we're adding an additional permanent part-time person to the budget.
Okay. And then the new truck you're getting, 210 versus 300 for double drive?
Full steer.
Really? It's $90,000 more for another wheel?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, absolutely, I agree with you, yeah.
The guys that run the single routes without a guy on the back, you know, you really don't want those guys jumping out into.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. For safety reasons, I agree with you completely.
They work pretty hard, and you know, whenever I think they're the ones that are using the majority of those trucks now, and we have them all down there.
I got to tell you, they're the nicest guys in the morning when they pick up. You know that? They really are very, very pleasant people. So, nice job.
I do want to mention too, this division is going to go through some transition as others have. Michael White, who was a longtime supervisor, retired February 1st. And then Ed Bethune, who's been our superintendent of sanitation and recycling, will be retiring sometime this year, in the latter part of the year. So we do have transition that we'll be experiencing as we are in other departments this year.
So we anticipate then some of those salaries, I was about to ask the same question about the salaries. We anticipate there will be an adjustment into that salary number because nobody's starting necessarily at the top of the range. So there should be some...
Right, but we're all paying, right, terminal leave. So...
Right, I'm just...
We may not realize the savings until next year, is what I'm saying.
Fine, I just want to kind of anticipate that
Right.
down the road. Got it.
I want to add some of the comments from Councilwoman Walsh. I think it's so important that we should find a way to work some of that into the budget because it's an investment. You know, the more that we can educate. I mean, I remember attending a couple of sessions with Ed. I know he was kind enough to do one also in a public meeting. I attended one at Hilt. And if you can teach this old dog new tricks, you know, if we can start educating our youngest residents from very early on, I think it's a great approach because that's just, you're forming the behavior now, early age, and they end up, you know, as your daughter educates you, they end up educating the parents, and I think that's just going to pay for itself, I mean, 100 times over.
I think that's what, when I was saying earlier that we can't afford to lose this opportunity to start to mold the new guys, that we have to pass on the knowledge, and I fully depend on Ed. I learn a lot from Ed. I work with him every day, and I pick his brain every day. And you know, I've worked with him before he was a supervisor. You know, he was the driver on my truck, and he's the one who taught me, you know, professionalism and safety in the workplace. And I've learned a lot from him, and I intend to pass that on to the, you know, to the new guys. And when we start to, I think we're going to start to interview some of the guys. Some of the, we only have 2 driver titles out of 6 trucks, and I never really elaborated on that. When you get the 4 drivers entitled, then I think that's when you start to, you know, we start to teach these guys to teach the younger guys, and then, you know, we are the people that speak, that we interact with the residents every single day. And the way I would like to run the department is to teach them to teach the residents. Well, when residents have questions, you know, not get angry. You know, everyone has a bad day, and sometimes they get angry when their garbage doesn't get picked up. And if there's a good reason why, then, you know, you should be able to, you know, explain that to them without, you know, throwing gas on the situation.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, you know, would help a lot too, is, you know, we're the eyes and ears of what goes on here every day, and it'll keep a lot of calls coming in, you know, from coming into Linda. If, you know, we sit down and we talk to them about what's, you know, what's right, what's not right, and, you know, in a professional way. And that's a resource that we can use, but it has to be, you know, it has to start now, because these guys are young. That's another, you know, that's another benefit with the injuries, keeping down the injuries. You know, a lot of the older guys like myself are the ones that, you know, maybe, you know, get the bumps and bruises and the aches, you know, worse than these younger guys do. So, you know, I'm excited, you know, for what we're going through right now, you know, and to be able to finally, you know, be able to change the culture that you know, we work with every single day, and have everyone come in with a, you know, positive attitude and teach camaraderie. And, you know, you don't have to like everybody that you work with, but I think, you know, you come in and you respect them, and you get the job done, and everyone gets along, they get home, they get safe, see their family.
Thank you.
So did you have any other questions about sanitation and recycling? Okay, so then we have yard waste. Is that last? Oh, yard waste recycling? Is Chris? Okay, that's okay. Then we'll wait. I just want to mention, I had the pleasure of meeting with all the sanitation and recycling employees, and I was very happy to do so, and I'm glad to hear that some attitudes have changed and that we have much better attendance, and that, you know, that our crews are full, because that's the toughest thing. And as I said to each one of them when they met, Rich and I and Ed met with them all, and I said, you know, everything else in the village can be going right, but if people don't get their garbage picked up, we're going to hear about it. Everyone will hear about it. And so it's a vital service that they perform in all types of weather, which I greatly respect. And so I want to thank them for the work they do, because really it's an important part of this village and what we do for our residents. Okay. So we'll move on to Chris. We have several divisions to discuss, and we'll start with streets, which is...
Streets?
Yes, which tab? 6.
No, I know it's tab 6, but
I didn't.
Do you want to start with streets, yard waste, or?
Wait, just tell me which one.
Yes, that was it.
I know they're all 6, but just tell me which one.
We'll start with yard waste. So what is that? It's in here somewhere.
No, but we're in yard waste recycling, right?
No, we're doing.
No, we're going to do yard waste. We're going to do yard waste. Just to finish up.
Okay, just so I'm clear, we're doing yard waste recycling tab 6 first?
Is that 6? We're checking. Are you in there? You probably got there before we did.
Of course I got there before you, because I'm paperless.
I know. I'm
Just want to make sure.
Okay, last one and 6.
Mine are alphabetical. So yes, now they're alphabetical. What page? It's only to drive remote crazy.
Yard waste.
Okay, so yes, we'll start with yard waste. I'm sorry for the confusion. So Chris Revisizer is our village engineer and our director of public works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yard waste is the collection of leaves, grass clippings, and small tree branches from our residents and the processing thereof. Leaves go to Lakeview to our compost facility. That's a registered BC facility. We compost them. Whatever we collect in 1 year has to be fully broken down, composted, so we can get rid of that finished product by the end of September of that following year. So the leaves from fall of 2018 will be out of the compost facility by this September, so we can make room for more. Our compost facility is very space constrained. We wish we had more space, but we have to make it do with what we have. We pick up grass clippings. We're not allowed to compost those because of DEP regulations, so we have to haul them out to an acceptable facility.
But all right, Chris?
I don't believe so. What I will be presenting to the council, possibly at the next meeting, is we did bid out privatizing yard waste and collecting yard waste curbside. We have got one bid. The numbers are quite high, and I want to compare it to what our actual cost is, both to show what it would cost to outsource and to show whether we're in-house or more efficient operations. And I hope to have that ready for, I think, the workshop next Wednesday.
Okay, so any questions about yard waste specifically?
I just have one question.
Sure.
So when you're doing your bidding, are you're bidding out for somebody to come in against our current process, but are you also, would there ever be a possibility of transitioning yard waste that you have to bring it to the recycle facility? Would that be something that we could?
If I may, I'd like to answer the first part of your question. The bid was structured on a weekly basis. It was two sections. It was basically from the April to October 16th collection, curbside, of containerized yard waste, be that leaves raked out from a spring cleanup, grass from cutting your lawn, or brush in less than 2 or 3 inches in diameter in bundles. That would be removed off-site. The vendor, the bid documents are written, so the vendor would have to remove that, find a disposal location, obviously acceptable to DEP. Then the second part of the collection bid had the vendor picking up containerized yard waste curbside during leaf season from after October 16th to the end of December 31st. By containerized, that would be the paper, biodegradable bags that we give to residents, and also anybody who put leaves, say, in a garbage can. Those leaves and that material, because there's no grass clippings after basically October 16th, would be transported to Lakeview to be put into our composting stream. For convincing residents to bring materials to Lakeview, that might be a very difficult challenge, almost on the order of abolishing rear yard pickup. There are a lot of homes with significant trees, very large trees, that create a phenomenal volume of leaves. And, most people either have to hire a landscaper to do the work, or if they did it themselves, they literally probably have to buy a pickup truck just to haul the leaves on a regular basis. We would also have to open Lakeview up on weekends. We don't have it open on weekends. If you wanted to dispose of leaves during the weekend, we do have a packer truck down at the recycling yard.
So if we were to, bid it out, it would be an added cost. There wouldn't be the option of, let's say, bidding it out to either the resident signing on, kind of like you do your cable bill, where you could either sign on for this and have an additional cost, let's say, or bring it down and
I did not fine-tune the bid document to that degree. We just wanted a street side service. One of the reasons we had the second portion, the containerized yard waste with just leaves, is that a lot of residents are bagging their leaves, leaving curbside, because they find that that's more convenient than putting them out at the curb, and if they get the schedule wrong, they run the risk of an enforcement action. So that a lot of people want to do that. That's why I wrote it like that. For a resident to opt out, we did not consider that. That could also be problematic. I think Montclair abolished the collection of leaves, and some other communities have done that also, but I don't believe they have as large a tree canopy and large trees like we have. The red oaks, like in the Willard School District, they produce a very large quantity of leaves.
But a lot of those properties, and I don't know the percentage, but they have landscapers who, blow them into a pile, and they could just as easy have them taken away by their landscaper to our facility. They're a resident, they could have them,
Well, a lot of them do, and that's what I presented last Wednesday with the landscaper, the revisions to the landscape ordinance, and the permit process for registering, and then that landscaper having the ability to pick up those leaves at the customer's request, obviously, and bring them to Lakeview. We have that process available for residents who would like it. We just have not gotten to any kind of level of making it a requirement.
Yeah, because I know that those municipalities, it's been successful, that they've, they thought they were going to have pushback, but it has been successful. So maybe not this year, maybe next year to think about options.
It can be done.
Bane of our existence.
Yeah, leaves.
Leaves.
Leaves are very much. The village produces a phenomenal volume of leaves.
Right.
Like I said, Lakeview barely has the room for them.
Currently, we do have the opportunity for people to bring their leaves to the recycling center during leaf pickup time. However, if we have a majority of our residents doing that, I don't know if we have the capacity for that. That's the only thing.
But like I said, there's municipalities up in New York where you can either opt in or opt out, and you can either bring it you can bring it to their recycling center, or you can pay this outside service, and it's just like you do your cable bill or your whatever.
Right.
So you could either opt in or opt out, and we have the facility, so, even if 30% did it,
it would be less that
would
we'd
be a
be
lot
picking
of
up, right?
tremendous savings.
For our collection efforts with the street division, it's might be a little bit problematic. They usually run loaders down the street, push the whole street, push it into a pile. If they're going to have to look at a key map and say, okay, this house number has declined our services, then the loader has to make a swerve around if they have anything out, rather than just...
No, but I'm just saying that if you were to bid it out to another service, they would handle it. We wouldn't...
Well, what we bid out was just curbside containerized collection. We're still collecting the bulk leaf piles with our heavy equipment, loaders and trucks, and the vacs. This was just the containerized. Yard waste has a couple different definitions. There's containerized yard waste, non-containerized yard waste, what could be such a distance from a catch basin, how early you could put it out, and so forth.
I just want to ask about the disposal fees on the line 048, the disposal fees that are the disposal fees?
Yes, well, we haul out the grass clippings, as I mentioned. So whatever we collect, we have to put into dumpsters and haul out usually within a day or so. We also had some vegetative waste from storms and debris that will not compost satisfactorily within our less than 1 year cycle. That also is hauled out. We had a very good arrangement with a vendor that's DEP permitted, and we hope to continue to do business with them.
So with that increase that's a significant increase on that?
Well, I believe we're also looking under that increase to deal with our tree log problem. The council recently passed a resolution declaring our tree log pile surplus. We tried very hard to sell it on gov deals, and there was no one interested. So right now we do have somebody that will take them, and we are trucking them to that facility at no cost other than fuel and labor. If they say we don't want it, we will have to use container, like 20-yard containers, and they'll run between $500 and $700 a container. And the village produces, like leaves, a lot of logs.
Well, I just had one kind of along the same lines with the disposal fees also, because it's what's been appropriated has relatively stayed the same. But last year, what was actually spent out of that appropriation was significantly less. So is that variable? Could that number come in lower or higher?
It could go either way. Last year, as I said, we had a vendor gave us a very attractive price on the yard waste branches that we could not compost. They took them. That was great. We hope to continue doing business with them. But we have to be prepared for the eventuality that they may say,
Okay.
DEP shut us down, we have enough, we don't need any more.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Okay,
Thanks, Chris.
now we'll move on to streets.
Is that?
6. Right, we're all set, everything else is 6.
Should be at the front, hopefully.
It just says streets.
We just go in the order that it's in instead. Why don't we just, do you want to go in the order it is? Yeah. Why don't we go in the order of the book, okay? Because it makes it easy.
Changing? Okay.
Just do the,
There you go.
Okay, now wait.
and if I had known it was in that order, I would put it that way. It's still 6, and we'll go in the order of the book. It'll make it easier.
Much better.
Yes,
One moment.
Building maintenance now, is that what you're doing?
building maintenance.
I'm good.
That's fine.
I'm good. Wait, just one moment, please.
Yeah, it's easier.
Okay.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, so building maintenance, Chris.
Building maintenance, it's a separate budget line item, but it's basically funds for the materials and supplies we need to maintain our structures. The work is done predominantly by the Traffic and Signal Division. The Signal Division, as they're known as, are pretty much the village's handyman force. We have a licensed electrician on that staff. We have some skilled welders. We have carpenters. Let's see, I mentioned electrician. And we also have a very, what's that?
Plumbers?
Plumbing, not yet that good, but we're working on that. We also have a very good heavy equipment operator that we loan out to other departments. And the budget is basically to maintain our buildings.
No question?
No question.
Okay, then we'll move on to, what's the next one in the book? Engineering.
Oh, no, it's a race, right?
Okay, engineering, we're the design engineering department for the village of Ridgewood. We assist other departments with their engineering questions, dilemmas, problems. As a licensed professional, I sign drawings, plans for submittal. We have a couple of applications right now before the DEP. If we need to do a footing drawing for something for the building department, very easy. We just do it, sign and seal it. In 2018, we collected about $14,410 in permit fees. Our staff billings in 2018 were approximately $25,800. On staff billings, projects such as the multifamily housing projects all provided escrow funds, so if there's any questions that come up on those projects, we track the time and they get billed for it. So that reduces the effort we have, the cost of the effort we have to provide that the taxpayer has to support. We assist other departments with code enforcement. The division issued over 500 summonses last year. Our public works inspector is very comfortable going out at 2 a.m. to catch water violators. He's been very good at it, very successful. We're currently providing design services for the water department for some of their upgrade projects. We're doing the plans for the Jefferson Street water main replacement and some other projects with them. We are, quote-unquote, billing the water department, or tracking our time for our effort, and in a way that's to justify the allocations that are granted to us from the water department.
So I just had a question about that big jump in salaries there.
We're looking to add an additional engineer. I start interviews with candidates next week, and Heather has said she wanted me to wrap it up as quick as possible so she can review any ones we recommend.
As you know, our engineering department does many more things than just engineering. And, Chris being the only licensed engineer has been a lot of extra work. And as you know, he's also our specs person for our bids. He's also he writes ordinances, so he's not just doing engineering. And so in looking at the projects that we have and his ability to do it by himself, it's become very difficult. So we thought this was the best way to go and to put it into the budget and be able to give him some assistance with the engineering aspect of it. Yovan is an assistant engineer. This person would also be an assistant engineer. But we are asking for someone who's licensed, I believe, right?
Yeah, we're seeking someone who's licensed. It's partially a continuity of the department's operation. If I was to step off a curb and trip or hurt myself and I was incapacitated, the only other licensed engineers the village has on its staff would be Rich Calby in the water department and, what's her name? Jill?
Jill.
My apologies.
The other thing is too, Hudson Street parking garage. Chris isn't going to be the clerk of the works, but he'll be overall, looking at aspects of that as our licensed engineer. So he's going to be involved in that project as well, which will take up some time.
So you like doing the bids and ordinance better than the engineering, is that what you're saying?
I'm not going to say that. It's just that, no, but in my career with the village, I've gotten a little bit away from design. I've spent more time developing the bid documents. I've gotten very comfortable with them. They've worked very, very well for us in the village. Ordinance seems to be something I kind of fell into. The format that I like also seems to be the format that Heather prefers to present to you at a meeting. So,
It's fine.
if she's happy, then I'm happy.
Just in terms of space allocation, I mean, you're pretty crammed in that office already. How do you anticipate, and I'm just asking because...
Very good
so
point.
jam-packed.
We've taken a look at our layout. We've gotten a preliminary quote on some new furniture and rearranging some of the desks. We do have a drawing board. Nobody draws anything by hand anymore. That would be replaced probably by a desk or computer desk because everything's done on computer now. Well, we've gotten a price from a state bid vendor that, we have to see how that goes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, capital for engineering.
I think we had a request to replace a pickup truck for the public works inspector. That would be a plow truck. As Heather mentioned, the assistant engineer is an excellent plow driver. He's right now home getting his beauty sleep because we expect a snow event tonight, as are the street supervisor and the signal supervisor, who both could not be here because they need their rest for tonight's event if need be. I didn't know either until this morning, but surprise.
Big all week long. It's supposed to be a mess.
Till tomorrow morning.
Just on that, you have that, that one vehicle replacement, is that it?
And
Yes.
then also paving,
I see the
obviously.
paving, I
Oh,
see
yeah,
that.
if you wanna get into capital
infrastructure,
paving.
got it.
Plus all the different capital
It's annoying snow.
improvements.
Just a couple inches, but we have to tack it.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to go through and see if there was anything that stands, that jumps out.
So we have Shedler Phase 3 that's there. We have the Franklin Avenue streetscape money that's there, and also the West Glen Avenue sidewalks. So that's also recommended to be funded this year.
All right, good, I'm good.
Okay. So we're ready to move on to the next one? Okay. Central Garage,
Fleet Services.
Fleet Services, whatever you wish to call it.
We've had a slight shrinkage in staff over the past year. We have now currently basically 3.5 mechanics, 3 full-time mechanics. All 3 are very well-versed gentlemen. One of them in particular, Anthony, has really worked to keep the emergency services satisfied with their vehicles, primarily the police department. We also, the other 2 gentlemen, Walter and Dennis, work on the heavy diesel equipment. And we have a retiree who is limited to working with us for a total salary of $15,000 a year. He handles some small stuff. And at Fleet, we had past year we had to do some upgrades to our underground storage tanks. We had a little bit of a notice of violation from the DEP that we had to address, which we did. Going forward, the village is going to have to look at possibly replacing those tanks in the next couple of years. They're pushing their life expectancy.
And there's nothing in capital on that?
We have diesel fuel tanks and gasoline.
Okay.
Is there any capital on that?
Maintenance truck,
Fleet is requesting capital to replace their maintenance truck. That's a truck that goes out to when a vehicle is broken down, hopefully to get it running so we do not incur the cost of a tow.
but they also, which I didn't realize, they bring tires or something also to like the garbage trucks, right?
Yep.
So I didn't realize that. I said, okay, we'll just have a regular pickup truck. We can't because they have to bring heavy equipment to be able to change if it's a flat or a blowout or a tire.
You're correct. The heavy truck tires are generally too heavy to lift. We don't want them to lift it, so we usually use a truck with a lift gate. That avoids any kind of stress and strain injury on our staff. But that, as Heather's correct to say, that brings the tire to the vehicle. We can change it to flat tire on the spot, again, to avoid a tow.
And that's a fleet maintenance truck, is that what that
Yes.
is? Okay. Hang on, just let me get a note.
So any questions on that one? Okay.
Just one question. So on that fleet maintenance truck, we're replacing one that we have?
Yes, we have an older one, and we're going to replace that.
Can we also get the year and the mileage on that one? Just, I mean, I think it's like a good exercise. Didn't we used to have an inventory of our vehicles? Do we still keep that?
We have an inventory, yes.
So we could just update that and with mileage, okay. All right, what tab are we on now? What are we doing?
Streets.
Okay.
Streets is a division that had a...
I got 1 minute, hold on, go ahead.
The truck is 20 years old.
Current one. But you can get the mileage if you want.
I mean, it's just a interest to just understand, you know, we know it's 20 years old, what's the mileage on it, what kind of use are we getting out of these vehicles? I mean, I think that's, at that price, we've gotten good usage out of it, obviously, so I think it's, and obviously, it's a good investment to purchase new, but I was just interested in.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
The street division had a management change over the past year. We have a new supervisor there, Mike Junta. He's doing a very good job. Morale in the division appears to be up. People are happier. They're coming to work. They're doing their work. Right now they are resting because, as I said, they are anticipating a snow event tonight and most likely another one Sunday night. Mike was very happy this afternoon because we got a delivery of salt and fuel. So he's all set because these storm events are burning through our salt piles very quickly.
Let's see, any questions on here? And again, on salaries, there's that increase. What's going on there?
Temporary and seasonal litter.
The
one
I'm sorry, I can't hear Jeff. Did he already figure it out? Wrong one.
There's a proposed clerk, I think, a new hire in there.
But what it is a transition. Linda, our longtime administrative assistant in the street division, is going to retire. And so we're going to bring in a clerk typist, keyboard and clerk 2, to replace her. And there's terminal leave for her in there.
Wait, she's already an employee?
Who? Linda is currently an employee. She will be retiring, and then we're going to bring, when she retires, we're going to bring in a keyboard and clerk to...
Different person.
To replace her in that position. Correct.
Yeah, the keyboarding clerk is a lower salary
Yeah.
range.
Capital on that?
So the temporary and seasonal at 75, it's a new line item. It's at 75.
Can you just speak up a little bit? I can't hear you.
Yeah, okay, so it's temporary and seasonal, 75,000. It's a new line item from the prior year. I'm assuming that's leaf collection? Looks like it's leaf collection.
It's leaf collection and yard waste collection. The seasonal temps, we use them as filler employees, both to cover for people who are on vacation or are sick. Sanitation, as Heather said, is first and foremost. The truck has to run, the truck has to do the route, so we'll staff it with whatever employees we can. In the summertime, sometimes we've taken street division employees and put them on sanitation because it's a very important resident service that we just cannot mess up. You know, a pothole patch can always wait a day or two. Someone's garbage collection, waiting a day or two doesn't make a very happy resident. Okay?
And one capital?
Capital.
Now, is that roll-off, triaxle roll-off chassis with Salter? Is that replacing, obviously, or is that...
We currently have four Salters. A couple of them are getting a little tired. We had one that was involved in a motor vehicle accident. It actually slid down a hill, and the saving grace for the operator was that there was a car parked on the side, and he hit it. Yes, but it prevented, it was on Morningside, sliding down towards Glenview, and if you went past Glenview, it'd be a bumpy ride down to the brook. So we're looking to, that's also going to be multi-purpose because we want to be able to use it as a salter and also as a haul truck for leaves.
What is that item, that cross-connection, it's COMP Central Garage? What is, I'm sorry. What is that?
We have a open notice of violation from the Bergen County Health Department that we have to address, and the funding is to repipe the floor drains in the garage so that they absolutely do not go into the stormwater collection system. Okay. We currently have like sealed covers on them, but that's not quite satisfactory. We have to repipe them.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Traffic signal?
Traffic and Signal Division, as I mentioned, Supervisor Jim O'Connell, he's been with the village over 40 years now. He's currently home getting his beauty sleep in anticipation of plowing. So he tenders his regrets.
He tenders his regrets?
Yes.
Tenders, I like that.
But, I'm sorry.
She didn't hear who it was.
Oh, Jim O'Connell.
Jimmy.
Signal, I believe, was looking to put on an additional employee. Their workload keeps getting more extensive. Like all the divisions in Public Works, we share employees. During leaf season, a couple of their staff members help the street division drive trucks and operate equipment, as have other divisions like water pollution. They are, I think most of the guys in Signal will plow tonight if we have a heavy enough storm. All the trucks we've bought over the years for like Signal division are plow capable.
Let's do capital, and then we'll ask questions.
Oh, the
Let me
capital.
just take a quick peek at that.
So it's a replacing the Ford F-250, correct? 65,000 for vehicles.
On just a curiosity, what is on the upgrade to traffic and signals with the pedestrian countdown? What does that get us? That 15?
The 15 gets us a number of lights for various signalized intersections. It's been a project of theirs over the last few years. As they get funding for the intersections that we control and own the traffic lights, where possible, they'll upgrade them so we have the pedestrian countdowns.
So how many does that take?
I'm not sure how many that's going to buy us, 15,000?
Right, that's what I meant.
Hopefully 2 intersections maybe.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the material purchase. The labor or the installation work is all done by staff in-house. And the electrician gets the permits with the building department.
We're getting more litter cans for CBD too? More trash?
We haven't replaced all of the older style cans. This year completed, I think, with the clear bags as requested by the police department for safety reasons.
We're also seeing that those clear trash receptacles are a little more fragile than the concrete ones. We had some problems with the very cold weather with the locks. They froze, so sanitation had a little difficulty changing the bags out. Past Monday's windstorm, I got reports of several of them blowing across the streets, again, because they're much lighter. So I anticipate a higher attrition for those receptacles than the previous traditional cement ones.
Were there any alternatives to those? Because, I mean, aside from the fact that they're just hideous, I mean, they are just awful to look at. Now we're hearing there's going to be more turnover. They're expensive, troubles with the locks, cold weather, temperamental. I mean, maybe we should, before investing more into these particular trash cans, maybe there are some nice, I know down, again, at League of Municipalities, they had some nice wrought iron that you could actually, they were very heavy, but you could line those with a clear bag also, but they weren't as really obvious. And they actually can, no, you can kind of see through it, but, you know,
And
I mean,
that kind of is going to make the police department happy.
well, maybe we should explore different options before we invest more, because they are really, you know, we do make so much of an effort to improve the visual aesthetics downtown, and to have those trash cans, I have to tell you, me personally, they are just so hideous. And, you know, maybe we could have a little group of people come together and look for nicer trash receptacles. They had one that was wrought iron, and maybe you saw it down there. It was not wrought iron, like a metal, punched metal. And you could
Anything with
actually-
metal or a masonry product would be a generator of shrapnel to injure people if there's an IED placed in it. And that's why we went with these types, because if somebody were to put in an improvised explosive device in it and it was to detonate, the container is not going to add anything to the damage. You're not going to have any cement fragments flying, you're not going to have any metal shards and so forth. So that's why the police department recommended these. These are also the same type of containers that New Jersey Transit uses in their system.
Well, I mean, just again, maybe we could just take a look at what other options are out there that maybe are of similar safety, you know, levels, but maybe are a little bit more attractive and a little bit more stable.
We can look.
Okay.
Other questions on operating capital? Okay. Water pollution control facility.
Water pollution is in a bit of a transition period. There's some staffing issues that are going to be addressed shortly. We did have a few bright spots in 2018. I think our net revenue on the liquid waste acceptance was in excess of $100,000. Bob would know the number better. That money goes straight to Myrna, if I recall. Huh? Most likely. Oh, okay, well, we didn't see it in our budget. We are continually fixing the machinery and equipment. Right now, we have a pump station that I'll be presenting to the council a bid to line the inflow pipes so we can fix the pumps that are currently on a bypass pipe.
And capital for, six of nine, right?
We're replacing a backhoe? No, that's not item.
So no vehicles, it's, let me see, end of the pump replacement, as he mentioned, backhoe, bisulfite tank, wait, yes,
And then that fiber optic, right? Is that the other, is that what that is? It's hard to go across. Oh, yeah, fiber optic.
The fiber optic is hopefully going to be the conclusion of the fiber optic network we're constructing. That's being constructed in-house by Signal to connect our pump stations alarm system to the plant. We lost our alarm system a couple years ago because Verizon decided to eliminate our copper lines, as they call it. Left us in a bit of a bind, so we had very little choice to do that. When we had a recent DEP inspection of our water pollution operations, we got a report that said everything was okay except our pump station alarm issue, and we are aware of it, and we hope to get that finished this year.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay. So next is, that's it. All right, then we also have planning and zoning board.
Planning board and zoning board, we have a new hybrid position. Ms. Jane Wondergem is covering both secretarial duties for the planning board and the zoning board. It's working out pretty well right now, and we hope it continues to work out well. There is some cost savings to the village.
Our meetings have been canceled, so we really have nothing happening anyway.
Well,
Slow. I should not do, we should keep our fingers.
too late. We got an 8-lot subdivision that popped in today.
We should?
Yep.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Right around North Maple across from the stable.
Oh, that's the same one we looked at, right?
Yeah, now they came with revised plans. It's going to be reviewed by the board's professional, myself, Bridget Bogart,
Okay.
our planner, and then after they address our comments, the members of the board will see it.
We spoke
So
too
enjoy your
soon.
time off. Work is coming.
We are, actually, so, okay. So, all right.
The building maintenance, right? Okay, sorry.
So can I just ask a quick question, though? On planning board, our salaries and wages, why are we anticipating such an increase? Is that because we added Jane, are we assigning Jane 100%?
It should be, we're splitting, she's 50-50 zoning board, planning board. We do have Ms. Bogart as the planner, who provides
Right.
planning services to the village, and there's also the board attorneys.
It's probably, it's fine.
Where's
I see, so I see, so it's not on the Board of Adjustment, I see, because we're...
That's correct, there's nothing on the Board of Adjustment, everything's here, it's just easier to present.
I did remember that, so, good. So, let me just ask Bob one question. So on our, let me go back to that tab again, hang on. Okay. On our, what happens to the money for the master plan? Is that, where is that?
So when we put it on the budget,
Right,
the whole amount was put into reserve,
okay.
and everything is sitting there waiting to be spent.
So we don't see it assigned here?
No,
Okay,
it's
fine,
been
got it.
budgeted, and it's off in
Very good.
another place.
And we currently have NV5 working for the board. They're under contract with us. I administer their payments. I just got another one on my desk because they've submitted periodic payment requests for the work they have done.
Just as an aside, we took care of the postcard. Is that all? Oh, good. Very good.
Yeah, it's all
Okay,
set to go.
Good.
Perfect. Okay. So, oh my goodness. Any other questions for Chris overall?
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
What other departments are you going to present on next week?
Next week?
He's done.
Oh, come on.
Boy, that's a lovely word, done. Let's ring of it.
Manager. Tab 1, village manager.
Thanks, Chris.
How'd you get tab one?
No.
I didn't choose it, so. Okay.
Just hang on 1 second, because my tab 1. Let me find one thing. Oh,
So for village manager, it's fairly flat, or actually less than what was budgeted previously. The one item that is increased is the conferences and meetings line. We've put money in here, and this is, obviously up for discussion, but our department directors would greatly benefit from educational opportunities at national conferences. And so it would be limited to, I believe it's $2,500 maximum. And if it were anything over that, then they would pay any incidentals or anything above and beyond that. I personally have been to national conferences. They have a higher level of education. They have greater opportunities for networking, which is beneficial. The first time I ever heard of paperless packets was at a national conference, and it was probably in the late 90s. We're not there yet. We will be there, but it's exciting because there are other states that are doing things differently than we do here, and it's a great opportunity to see what else is being done in your profession in a different way. We haven't allowed travel to national conferences for I say about 10 years. And, I think it would be beneficial. Again, I know that our greatest asset are our employees, and education is important. And so I'd like you to consider funding that for those who may want to go to their national conference.
no questions. That was,
Okay, so we'll move on to council. And that's tab right afterwards. Same tab. So council, sorry, I'm getting there. The main one is the miscellaneous, which was the increase in, is that Swaggart?
25?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
I put money in there, $25,000 for any projects that you may want to identify. It could also cover, the centennial if we're moving forward with that.
wait a minute, we have to vote on Prop 25.
No,
Do you have that money for projects? Like, what kind of
Well, in
projects?
other words, during the year, you'll say, oh, let's do this. And then we, kind of go through the budget and try to find a place to fund it.
Yeah, so I just thought it'd be good to have in there, and, as projects come up, we have a place to use it.
That's exciting. We've never had
What has that
a,
been over the years? Do we
it's
know?
nothing. We've never had money for
We've
projects.
never done it, we've scrounged to find the money
We
someplace.
scrambled.
What's that spread,
How much has it been? I don't know. And if you think the 25 is too much, just cut it back.
We don't have to spend it. One project comes up that we want to do,
No.
that's like $1,000 then.
I just noticed that I've been here, we probably had one or two projects a year that we want to do something
come up
with,
during the
then
year.
The recycle bags that we want to promote, I mean, that could be something that as a council we promote.
Sure.
And go to different events and hand them out to try to get, stuff like
perfect
that.
example.
Yeah.
Printing costs for material, yeah, I guess.
We have little stick figures of,
Or,
on the
like,
back
for
of those little
example,
designs. Wouldn't that be cute?
You could wear a costume, like something.
I was going to say, or for example, this MV5 postcard that's going out.
Yeah.
We kind of just had to scramble and find out, okay, where we're going to put this.
And I guess that's the reason I asked about NV5, because, they're funding a portion of that, and then we're just making
Correct.
up the difference, which is,
It's not a huge amount of money.
It's a very small amount of money, but shouldn't that be applied to the planning board budget? Isn't that what that comes out of?
Well, it's not budgeted there right now, so.
Right, but should it, it's unanticipated, but should it have come from there?
it could certainly be moved
Right.
if you feel that it's
Yeah, that's
more
why
related to
I think
that.
it belongs there.
That's fine.
Right.
We could
okay.
do that.
And that's why I was asking before, and it kind of just, but, that's not an exciting, project. It is exciting, don't get me wrong, but,
There are times you want to do a traffic study, or you want to do a small study about something. And as Bob said, we kind of scramble, look for a place to, fund it. And, we usually find a place, but this kind of gives us a place to go to each time. Again, if you want to reduce the amount, if you don't want to have it in at all, that's your option. But certainly something that would be beneficial and helpful for us.
good, okay, that's nice.
Okay. So the next one is, I didn't list it, so we can't do that one. Yes, village clerk. Let's see, I got two. All right. So, fairly even or less than it's been in the past. The one thing we did do in the part-time salaries and wages is put in the possibility for an additional person to help with Oprah. I'm going to have Donna speak about Oprah right now and the number of requests we received and the types of Oprah requests we have received.
You're all familiar with the number of Oprah requests we receive in a year. They seem to increase every year. In 2018, the number of Oprah requests were slightly down, but there seems to be a tendency for them to become more complicated and more voluminous. In 2019, we're just barely into the year, and we're 50% over the number we had last year at this time.
Really?
Yes, and they are more complicated where they involve more departments, and so I think
How many in 2018 of requests?
last year at this time we had 76, and this year we have 111 so far.
But in total for 2018, how many were there, Donna?
I don't have that number. I can get it for
Yeah,
you.
that'd be great, thanks.
It's in the area of 600, I think.
600?
But I can get you the exact figure.
is that a job just for one person?
5 people presently working on Oprah requests.
Because they're juggling other things, they're working on a
Absolutely.
ton of stuff. So is that something one person,
We could employ one person full-time doing
assign
Oprah.
that
We
person
could.
to do that?
We have,
Like a public records person, is that
We
what they would be
could,
doing?
we could hire someone full-time, and they would be busy every single day. Even though we can't predict when they come in, just the sending it out, following up with the departments, who are very cooperative, by the way. But, it's just this follow-up, getting back to the requester if we need an extension, telling them how long an extension we need, dealing with the department heads, trying to determine, sometimes they're so voluminous, we can't even imagine giving it. It varies. Sometimes it is commercial requests, other times there are requests for salaries for every single employee and their titles, or any merit increases given to employees. And it comes from all various types of people, sometimes from news papers, sometimes from union people.
sometimes they involve property records or building department records where there could be half a dozen files that need to be photocopied, and all of those documents need to be redacted. And it takes hours for us to redact telephone numbers, fax numbers, email addresses from those documents. And very often we can hand those to our part-time people to take care of that redacting for us. And then we need to photocopy it again, so those redactions don't bleed through, and you can't read that information. So it's very time-consuming.
And lately, we've gotten a lot of requests for emails. And with emails, there are things that have to be redacted from an email, because if they're requesting emails on this topic, but other topics are discussed, then those other topics are redacted, because you don't give them more than what they've requested. So it's a process. It really is.
Associated with these requests?
Only if it's over 3 hours.
Over 3 hours or 200 pages, then we're able to charge the person an hourly fee, and or 5 cents a page.
And what was the total of those last year?
Right. I could get that information for you.
Because
Not
you're
many.
thinking about, potentially having to hire another person just to be able to cover this, and there's an offset, then it's not really a 100%.
It's not much of an offset,
Oh.
no, unfortunately.
You charge has to be the lowest pay of the person in that department.
Correct.
So if I have a clerk and I spend 2 hours on it, 3 hours, I can't charge my rate. I have to charge the clerk's rate.
So Donna, have you kept I know you said there was about 600 Oprahs last year or so. Have you kept the time as to how much time is being spent on all of those Oprahs? Do you have an hour, like the total hours? Do you have that?
We have been keeping a log, I think, since about the middle of last year.
And how many hours has that totaled since the middle of last year?
I can get that
Yeah,
information
good,
for
thank you. Just would like to know. Yeah.
We've kept a log for each of the 5 people that have been involved.
And you'll continue to do that, right? That's helpful to know, just to kind of understand what...
But Jeff, what that doesn't include is the time that's spent outside their office. And, so if it comes to me, I have to see that my people administer it, then I have to make sure what goes back to them is appropriate.
And then as well as sometimes Matt, too.
Matt and Dylan spends an enormous amount of time on emails where he has to go back to archives to get them, and then someone has to review them.
Dylan, do you have a feel for how many hours you spend on them?
Lots of hours. So,
Is that a math term, many?
Many bites?
So just to your point about you have to charge the lowest, but if you hired someone specifically for that task, then even though somebody, so in other words, would that then be the rate that you're charging? Even if there's somebody that's working for less?
Well, if that person were a part-time person, they'd be a new part-time person, so it would be their salary. But eventually, it may not be. It has to be the lowest paid hourly rate of the person in the department.
But if we had somebody specifically assigned to that at that...
It doesn't matter.
No, I'm saying but what I'm saying is that certainly other people's time, the time is valuable. I mean, it's taking you away from other things. Right. So if we had somebody assigned to that, and really the long-term effect would be maybe a savings, because you'd be more productive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They would be more productive, because they would not be focusing so much on Oprah. Right. To think that, when it started, I, as a municipal clerk, could do Oprah on my own, because people really were asking for documents more as the law intended. Over the years, it's become commercialized. It's become used for other purposes. And the bill that's been in the Assembly and Senate hasn't really gone anywhere, unfortunately. Some things would be beneficial for us, some would not be beneficial, but it really doesn't look like anything's going to be done even this go-round. So we'll see what happens, but yes, we could definitely use a part-time person during those hours that person was here, just Oprah.
Let me just ask you a question. So the majority of the Oprahs, are they by residents of Ridgewood?
No.
No.
No, it's, I'm sorry, it is quite a mix. As I said, there are persons that are purchasing homes that are looking for documents that are permits that might have been filed in the past, so they're looking for records about homes they're purchasing. They may be appraisal companies looking for records, environmental records. As Heather mentioned, they could be companies looking for employee salaries.
It could be a company that sells dog food and they want the names of all dog owners, right?
There could be companies that are selling products and they're looking for building lists of building permits. They look for a permit log.
For pools, for example, pool maintenance companies may ask for those for the pool. You know, it varies.
Companies looking for engineering records.
We do phase one environmental work for engineering firms. They charge their clients a lot of money, and we can charge 5 cents a page for 8.5 by 11 or 7 cents for legal size. Or if it's a plan, we can, bigger, we can charge what it costs us. If, however, they ask for it electronically and we can provide it electronically, we can charge nothing.
We have attorneys that are sending us requests now instead of doing discovery. They're sending us requests, escrow deposits,
Wow.
tax records. So it runs the gamut.
All right, thank you.
Crazy. It's a lot. Maybe we should revisit that bill and see if we want to weigh in on it or encourage it. Yeah, I know. A whole nother conversation.
It is another conversation. So the next is elections. The good news is, because we don't have a municipal election this year, the election budget is down by a lot of money. Next year, of course, it will increase, but this year it's a good year, and it is a lot less than it was last year. Our biggest expense for elections actually are the charges for the primary election, which is charged by the county, and it runs usually somewhere between $22,000 to $25,000 to $26,000, and that's one of the largest expenses. So on Monday, hopefully it won't snow too much, and we can still have our meeting on Monday. I'm planning on it, and our departments on Monday include police, fire, and municipal court, and they begin at 7:30 p.m. So I thank you for your attention. If you do have additional questions that you think of, let us know, and that's what we have for tonight.
All right. We'll go back to public comments. Yes, sir? You have a question? All right, with that, we'll close public comments.
May I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Oops, yeah.